All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this talk, Stop Treating Accessibility as an Afterthought, Concrete Steps of Building Inclusive Apps. So this session was originally a full-length talk, but I was asked to boil it down and do a lightning talk about it. So it's a little bit more condensed, but in the end, I will share a link tree where you can look or watch the full talk, because this talk was already held at FlutterCon. So my name is Manuela, and I am a Flutter developer. I'm also a co-organizer for Flutter Berlin meetups and a Women Tech Makers ambassador. So let's jump right in. What is accessibility? So accessibility is the practice of making your digital products usable by as many people as possible. And this means not only for disabled people, but for everyone. And it is a common misconception that people think that accessibility only concerns people that have some kind of disabilities, but it is rather a way of rethinking usability, and accessibility usually benefits all people. So why should we work on that? Around 1.3 billion people are significantly disabled. And this is around 16% of the world population, and that's quite a significant number. And if the amount of people did not convince you to work on accessibility, maybe this can. So there's a law coming up for the EU, which is the EU Accessibility Law in 2025. And that says that all digital products need to be accessible, and they need to be a certain level of accessibility. And also, there's a similar law for the US and also for the UK. And the level that we have to target if we don't want to be sued is WCAG 2.1 level AA. So what is WCAG? WCAG are principles of accessible apps made by the World Wide Web Consortium, and those principles are: apps should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And the level AA specifies the level of accessibility that needs to be targeted. And there are three types of levels of accessible apps. It's A, AA, and AAA. And if you want to learn more about WCAG, please do so at wcag.org. So, how is Flutter handling accessibility? Flutter takes accessibility super serious and works on improving accessibility continuously. And whenever there is an issue concerning accessibility, there's a very high response rate and things get high priority. And also, when you use a material widget or some of the default widgets of Flutter, you always have a label or tooltip that you can fill out to ensure accessibility is given, and add some semantic information to your widgets. And if you do not know what semantics are information that will be read by a screen reader, so a visually impaired user can navigate through your app. So when we look at the counter app of Flutter, so if you're a Flutter developer, you know this app. Usually this comes when you run the Flutter command to create a Flutter app. And I drew a box around those widgets that are created, and each boxes have a widget node in the so-called widget tree of Flutter. And we do not only have a widget tree, we also have a semantics tree. And one interesting thing is that not every widget has a corresponding semantics node. That means the widget tree and semantics tree look different. And this is the reason for that is we do not need to know that the floating action button of the screen before does have a plus icon. If we navigate through it with a screen reader, we just need to know that it is a button that will increase the counter. So, how is the semantics tree actually created? So if we write widgets, we create a widget tree. And this widget tree creates an element tree which stores the state and other information, and that in turn draws the render tree. That creates also the semantics tree, which converts to platform-specific objects. And the platform-specific objects are UI accessibility or accessibility node info for Android or iAccessible for Windows. So Flutter is multi-platform, as you might know, and accessibility support is given for mobile, desktop, and web. One interesting thing that you will notice, though, when navigating to a Flutter web app is with a screen reader is that there is an invisible button that will turn on accessibility because Flutter doesn't build a semantics tree by default. This was done to improve the performance of Flutter web. And yeah, so basically your users that use the screen reader have to turn on that button. So to understand what we want to fix on our apps or where we can improve, we need to know what kind of disabilities exist. So there are things like mental health conditions or mobility impairments. There are also cognitive impairments, hearing impairments, or visual impairments. For this talk, I had to reduce the scope of it, and I'm only going to talk about visual impairments. But please note, there are many, many different other ways to make your app accessible. So I personally believe it's very important to know for whom you're fixing things or improving things. And for this talk, I was able to interview a few people in need of accessible apps. And one of them, called Batuan, was allowing me to show you a video where you can see how a visually impaired user uses an app. Oh, no. Okay, this video is sadly not playable at the moment. So if you stay after this talk, I will play it for you. We have semantics. So just imagine I played a video right now, and you heard a lot of information while the user was navigating through the screen. And each of those words and informations are semantics. And those semantics consist of information that the user needs to know. And in Flutter, we have semantics widget. So whenever you have a widget that is not a default widget, so something custom, you need to wrap your widget in the semantics widget and give it some information. And we have a lot of different properties in the semantic widgets for Flutter. And I want to point out one specific one, and it's called sort key. And the sort key can give your app basically a way of showing or reading the semantic nodes in a different order. So if you want to give the semantics order a different UX, you can just use the sort key. Come on, videos. Yeah. Okay.
Accessibility project. Last. Second. First.
So this is without the sort key, and with the sort key.
First. Second. Last.
So you can give it a different order. Then we have merge semantics, and that's quite handy when you have a checkbox and information. So you want to merge it together to have the screen reader read it as one semantic node, and you use it as this. And this is a video how you can use it or how the experience is in the end.
Danger level. High. Danger level. High.
So it makes sense when you have a checkbox, then it doesn't say checkbox enabled, and then sometimes else, hey, it's about the conditions or something. So it's a little bit more, informative. Then we have block semantics, and block semantics is a widget that will block all the semantics of all widgets that were painted before it in the same container. So that's great if you have like a custom pop-up.
Warning, bear behind you. Warning, bear behind you.
So you see it blocked out everything else that is behind this pop-up. Then we have exclude semantics. And exclude semantics will include or exclude the widget it is wrapped around. So for instance, if you have an icon or something that is unnecessary, because if you would have seen the video, you would have noticed that the information is quite dense when you're navigating your app through a screen reader. So it makes sense to include unnecessary informations.
Hi, Bear Buddy. Brown bear. Image. Brown bear.
So you see, it skipped through the big text. I excluded that. Usually, don't do it like this. That's bad UX, but for this talk, I did it, so you can see. So now that we've talked about how to implement accessibility in Flutter, let's talk about testing for accessibility. Because, let's face it, every code we touch today or write today will be touched in the future sometimes to refactor or to add some features. And tests will help us to check if we broke something considering accessibility. So in Flutter, we have something called the Accessibility Guideline class in our testing API. And that's great, because with that, we can check against VCAC guidelines. So we can use it as follows. We have here a test that will check for tap target guidelines for Android and iOS, and also for text contrast. We can also test for text overflows with media query. So simply wrap your widget in a media query and set your text scale factor to check if large fonts will break your app. And that's actually quite important, because large font is the most used accessibility feature of your users, because usually you just get old and use a large font. So my mom uses large font, my father uses large font, even I sometimes use large font. And then we can also check for semantics during tests. And we can use this matches semantics matcher, and this one is not a fuzzy match. So basically, when you test semantics with that, you have to put everything in that the semantics node contains. And that makes it a very, very lengthy talk to write. So I would recommend you to only do that with the main flows of your app. So I work in e-commerce. What is important for our app? It's purchasing. It's putting something into the cart and buying it. So definitely condense that down to your main flows of your app. So then you can also check for the accessibility traversal. That was the thing I showed with the semantics order. So in which order the semantic is read. And for that, you can use simulated accessibility traversal. It can be quite handy if you have used the sort key and want to check if everything works correctly. Then we can also visualize semantics if you have to debug or you don't know where some semantic node is coming from. Sometimes some semantic node is blocking another one. And basically, this is how the app presents itself to assistive technology. For that, you can use in Flutter the property in the material app called Show Semantics Debugger, and it will show you those boxes with the semantic information. So, and now let's go quickly over the process of adding accessibility to our current project, because that's why we're all here. We want to know how to make our apps accessible and how to include it into our process. And it's easy, because it all boils down to communication and awareness. So usually you have to communicate to your designer and to your PO. So to the designer, hey, what should happen if the user turns on large font? Or when should a specific widget be read in the screen reader experience? And awareness, so for instance, I work in e-commerce. If I get a graphic with some specific promo or codes that is just on an image, a person with visual impairments will never get to get this promotion. They will never have that information without a text or semantic information. So it's very, very important that everyone in the company is aware of accessibility, because we have to all work together to make it work. And one nice thing to remember is checklists. So one could use accessibility release checklists to check if we considered everything about accessibility before releasing. This is from the Flutter docs, so you can just check it out on the Flutter docs, and this will already improve your app by a tenfold. So definitely check that out. So my intention for this quick talk was to spark a little bit of interest in all of you to work on accessibility. And I know that accessibility is probably not the coolest new feature that one wants to implement, because let's face it, it's a semantics widget that we wrap around a widget, and it's not interesting to code, but it helps people so much to use your app. And I go much deeper into it in the FlutterCon talk that I have linked to with this QR code, so you will land on a link tree and can watch the video or watch a podcast or listen to a podcast that I've made. Also, I linked my Twitter account. I have a pinned tweet with a lot of accessibility-related information on it. And yeah, I noticed a lot of people are talking about accessibility, but not a lot of people are implementing accessibility. So let's go ahead and implement accessibility. So thank you so much for listening. If you stay after this talk has finished, you can see this specific video that I hyped so much up. Yeah. And one more thing, if you are a Flutterista, that means a non-binary or woman developer for Flutter, feel free to join Flutteristas. It's a group for non-binary and female developers. And we are holding a conference. So if you're interested in Flutter, please tune in. It's on the 11th of November. We worked so hard to make it happen. So yeah, see you there. And I will check out if I can share the video now. So you see it's super information dense, so please keep it very descriptive if you add some semantic information to your widget. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.